Hi, beautiful souls. It's Tan back here again today with you on this astrology, human design, and Gene Keys channel. And today we're going to be looking deeper into Gene Key and Human Design Gate 39. But before we get started, I wanted to make a quick announcement that, as you can probably see, I have a very busy altar space going on behind me. And that's because I've been making a lot of zodiac, astrology, magical crafts. And one of those crafts that I've been making, and I'm really excited to share this with you guys, are zodiac ritual oils. So this one is Aquarius zodiac ritual oil, by the way. You can see it. With all of these changes that's been happening, I've really not just only been sort of getting into working with my hands more, but actually making oils for myself that I've been using to help me transition into this new phase in the era of humanity. And so this Aquarius oil is made from clove, camphor, and patchouli. Those are some of the ingredients that I've got in here. And it smells really medicinal, sort of, but also really grassy. And so I've been using this, when I'm doing rituals, just anointing my candles and sometimes my jewelry or just anything that's on my altar space that I use in spell work and rituals, like on Aquarius full moons and new moons. So if you guys are interested in any kind of magical crafts that you currently use and you would like to sort of experiment with some of what I've been creating, because these are really natural ingredients that I put into these oils, just natural herbs, as you can see in the jars behind me. Some of them I do grow myself as well, but mostly they are dried herbs that I've put into here. And so, yeah, do visit my website, scentofthesages.com. It's also kind of like an online store, online shop that I've recently launched just to get some of my magical crafts out there to the world. I would really appreciate your support. And thank you. Yeah, thank you, beautiful souls, if you do head over and are interested in any of these oils. All right, and without further ado, we're going to begin looking into the Aquarius archetype. And so we like to begin these Gene Key and Human Design Gate videos by doing a quick overview of that archetype in general. And also, if you're interested in learning more about human design, there are courses available now on my website, as well as various different types of readings that me and my sister soul tribe are very excited to be able to offer you guys. So do check out that website as well, tanastrology.com, which most of you already know, of course. All right, let's begin looking at the overview of Gene Key 39. So Gene Key 39 is the zodiac sign of Cancer, and it moves from 930 degrees of Cancer to 1507 degrees of Cancer, with a shadow of provocation, a gift of dynamism, and a siddhi of liberation, the tension of transcendence. The dream arc vision key bird is, of course, the seagull. The life key animal is the goat, and the fear key underworld creature is the mosquito, one of my most annoying insects. In the codon ring, this gene key is part of the ring of seeking, and it's associated with the amino acid serine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. In the 64 I-CHING hexagram, this hexagram is water over mountain, obstacles. Love effortlessly carves its own path through even the hardest of rock. The programming partner of Gene Key 39 is Gene Key 38, so I also recommend that you check out that video on Gene Key 38 as well, which is a Capricorn archetype, because the programming partner is the opposite point in the zodiac wheel, and it offers a complementary opposite energy to Gene Key 39. In human design, Gate 39 is located in the root center, and it connects to Gate 55 in the solar plexus via a channel called the channel of romance, or emoting, with a shadow of emptiness, the gift of romance, and the siddhi of true love. Wow. I did not know that Richard has described this particular channel as such, but that's very interesting. Now, I don't want people out there to think, oh, if I don't have this channel, I'm not going to find true love. But I think it's more about the archetype of true love that can be found here within everything. Like even when you're having your breakfast, you can feel either emptiness or true love, kind of like that energy. All right. And of course, we're going to begin by looking at the nature association with this gene key. And when it comes to the bird, this gene key is associated with the seagull. So the seagull has been a symbol for a very long time in our culture of the ability to soar above emotional dramas and see through your emotional boundaries. And in order to do that, finding creative ways to be above your emotional dramas. The seagull is a very clever bird. One of the techniques that is very clever of them is how they stamp their feet in groups to imitate rainfall so that earthworms will come to the surface so they could feast on them. They also drop mollusks onto rocks from the sky to break the hard shells and then also consume them. These are just some very clever and even creative techniques that the seagull utilizes. The seagull also has a very interesting relationship with salt. Seagulls are able to drink from both fresh and salt water. This is a very rare trait to have, and the reason why they're able to do this is because they have special pair of glands right above their eyes, which flush the salt from their system. So this gene key is linked to tears and crying in some ways, just like gene key 55 is, because salt is being flushed from the body. There's a relationship when it comes to tears and salt, we can say, and I've explained a little bit more about this in my video on gene key 55, so I highly recommend that you check out that video as well. It's in my 64 gene keys playlist. I might also mention it in this video. I'm not yet sure if the messages that are coming through today is going to kind of lead there, but if it does, then I'll be mentioning it in this video as well. Therefore, if you are somebody who has gene key 39 in your chart somewhere, in human design gene keys, or maybe it's in your astrology birth chart, like maybe it's one of your angles, if one of your angles falls between these degrees of Cancer, maybe it's like your ascendant or your midheaven, your IC or your MC, then you will have this particular archetype quite strongly as well in your chart. So if you have this, you are somebody that is very creative, we can say. You have a lot of creative urge and a lot of dynamic energy that can be felt like from your body, physically, we can say. Of course, you may also be somebody who's very prone to crying because of the association with salt that we just mentioned previously. Now, there can also be a shadow to this energy, which is that you have a lot of creativity, but you don't have an outlet for it. You just can't express your creativity. And that can lead you to falling into taking that energy and maybe not eating healthy for yourself, or overeating, or using food as a way to cope with the inability to be creative. But when you can be creative, you have the potential to sort of provoke the spirit within other people, we can say. So when you are around somebody who has gene key 39, you will feel that, I've noticed these people are sort of will say things to you that can trigger you, or will say things unpredictably or out of the blue, and provoke your emotions in some ways. And so depending on how easily you're triggered by others, you may like this, or you may not like this, or you may feel very triggered, or you may be like, I'm not so triggered by this, we can say. But before we move, yes, let's begin by looking at the shadow of provocation of this gene key, and what does that mean when you're in the shadow of provocation? Richard Rudd describes the 39th shadow of provocation as one of the main factors in the world that causes violence. And violence in this case can be interpreted as physical violence. It can also be emotional violence, and it tends to be emotional violence most of the time because this is Cancer archetype. So it can be more of like being prone to emotional violence or causing emotional violence, and mental violence as well. But like I said, mostly it's going to be emotional violence. So in the nature of this gene key, we can say it doesn't have a lot of logic within it. It's very primal, very gutsy, very instinctive. And that's the moon energy, that's Cancer energy. It's mother energy, right? If you think about a mother, if somebody hurts a mother's child, the mother is just going to cut that person's head off. It's instinctual, maternal in that sense. However, when you're in the shadow of provocation, there is a certain fear that occurs within you and within your body, and you don't know how to cope with this fear. And when you don't know how to cope with this fear, it will result in violence. So this is the fear that you have here when it comes to Jinki 39 of being trapped. So the fear of not having individual freedom, in whichever way you want to interpret that. And when I was reading up on this Jinki, I immediately had this image of a zoo coming into my mind. So when you see animals in a zoo, right? They are trapped there. They can't really go anywhere. They're not able to migrate. They're not able to move around like they would naturally do. Just like human beings, we have to move around. We have to travel. And when we're not able to do that, and when you can see in the zoo, when animals are not able to do that, they either become very violent, they hurt themselves, or they become violent to other animals in their captivity, or they just become a little bit insane in some ways, and they're just not normal in their head anymore. That is the way that when you are trapped, your energy and your body kind of reacts. Another way of looking at the word provocation is also called button pushing. So when you're in the shadow of provocation, you push other people's buttons intentionally, but also unconsciously. And you also get your buttons pushed very easily, and you're going to have both, okay? You're not going to be one or the other. Don't fall into victimization if you have this gene key, because there's a potential for that. Don't fall into the victimization of giving your power away to other people and feeling like you're the only ones getting your buttons pushed, because that's not the case. You also push other people's buttons. This button pushing can be considered as a part of that emotional violence that we're talking about. And emotional violence is actually coming from something very acoustic in nature. So a lot of it has to do with the tone of your voice, the intonation of your voice. This is what, it's not really about what you say that causes another person to feel something. It's more of the tone that you said something that made somebody feel certain things. And you use the tone of your voice to achieve an emotional result that you want. So in a way, it's a little bit like manipulation, but it's not like a Scorpio manipulation. It's Cancer type of manipulation. And one of the biggest uses of tone that this gene key will use is this intonation, tone of voice of self-pity in order to instill guilt in other people. So something along the lines of, you said that to me, and the moment you said it, I just felt so hurt. You said that to me, and I just could not sleep last night. This is emotional violence. This is not taking responsibility for your own emotions and your feelings, because there's a way that you can talk to another person without instilling guilt onto them, but still able to have you express the way that you feel. And that is with the tone of your voice. You can say to another person, you kind of said this to me yesterday, and when you did, I wasn't able to sleep. The other person's not going to feel guilty about that. We're having a discussion now. You said this to me yesterday, and when you did, it just kind of made me feel pretty bad. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what happened there. That's an open communication. You see the difference. In order for you to take this power back to yourself and not, give that power away to other people, because when you are provoking people in this way, what's actually happening is that you are also provoking yourself back in return. You're also sort of exaggerating the drama that's happening there. So you have to really be mindful and consider how have you been wired to respond? How have you been wired to react to your environment? Because how you reacted to that environment causes you to react that way in return. The way that you are provoked by others causes you to provoke them in that way in return, if that kind of made sense. So the moment somebody said something and you immediately felt bad about it, why do you feel that way? Why did you give your power away in that sense? Why were you so provoked by it? Because the moment you felt so provoked, now you have to provoke somebody back in return. The moment you felt that somebody was emotionally, sort of violating you, now you have to emotionally violate them back in return. So it's the initial receptivity, the receiving of what's happening to you in your environment that you have to be more mindful about. Richard Rudd says that you are trapped the moment that you react to provocation. So the reason why this can happen, and the reason why you can take a little comment or a little tone of voice from another person and 10 times the reaction to what was being communicated to you is because you take things personally. This is really what it comes down to. You have to be able to view this from a less personal perspective, from a more impersonal perspective, from a more objective place. And that objectivity is the ability to understand that somebody was simply just resonating some speech codes by the means of their vocal cords. Somebody was just simply resonating some speech codes via the means of their vocal cords. It is not as personal as you think. And therefore, you need not react in the way that you might have in your shadow self. And here's the thing, I feel like this Cancer archetype is also really provoked by Capricorn energy, because Capricorn archetypes and Capricorn energy, planets in Capricorn, tend to have an authority in their voice, or maybe a coldness in their voice, and that is what provokes you, Jinky 39. But I want to say this so that you can escape from this, or not escape, but you can empower yourself out of this trap. Because if you continue to be so reactive to the vocal cords of another person, you yourself are going to have this energy of being trapped like the animal in a zoo. It will keep happening within your body. Anybody can trap you in this case, and that is really not conducive to self-empowerment. And when you are reacting so personally 10 times and very quickly to another person, it will ensure that you are not able to breathe deeply. So taking a deep breath is the key, the first step to unlocking the trap energies that are within your body. Because if you don't allow yourself to breathe fully, if you continue to react to other people's vocal cords, what ends up happening is that you will begin to deplete your energy. And then when you deplete your energy, you reduce your own capacities. You're not able to act in life out of your true potentials. You can, at the worst, experience fatigue, depression, complete burnout, and just a loss of energy. And the solution here, of course, when we're talking about this, it's not about changing anything externally. It's about changing your attitude to your environment, your attitude to what's going on around you. And when we look at this even more from a scientific perspective, this, trap energy will not allow you to be able to metabolize your food properly. So that may result in weight gains and just continuously being hungry. But really, it's about your spirit that's actually hungry. And what your spirit is actually hungry for is creativity, freedom, individuality. So Richard also describes Jinky 39 as being the cause of global obesity or malnutrition, depending on where you are in the world. So when you have the repressive shadow, so you're going to have both. You're going to have repressive and reactive, and they're going to switch back and forth in your life. But when you're in the repressive shadow, it's called being trapped. And I think we already understand this. We talked about this a lot. When you're being trapped, a certain fear inside of you is not able to be expressed. Your reservoir of life force and creativity is trapped inside of you. Your life energy becomes frozen, and your true potentials, your true capabilities lies inert within your body. When you are in the reactive shadow of this, it's called provocative. So this is when you get angry. So with this archetype, with this gene key, you want to allow yourself to get angry, but you want to use your anger for creativity and productivity, right? So the shadow of provocation is the path to the gift. Just like all the gene keys, the shadow is the path to the gift. And so the path here is to get angry, is to use your anger in a productive way. But when you're in the shadow of provocation, you're still learning how to use your anger in a productive way. What happens is that you will use that anger in a not productive way first before you learn how to channel it into productivity and creativity. Richard Rudd describes it that the energy of anger, it takes the energy of anger to crack the layers and layers of inertia and repressed fear inside of you. So it's kind of like if you think about that image of the zoo, that animal has to get so angry that he or she is able to break themselves out of their cage. So anger has to become that explosive before they can get out of that cage and then begin to understand that, okay, I had this anger inside of me. Now that I'm free, I'm going to use that as a source of creativity and power for the rest of my life to make sure that I have continued freedom and to give freedom to other people. Kind of like that energy. But yes, when you're sort of still like the animal that's breaking out of the zoo, you can act out or project your anger onto others. It's a fear that's been made dynamic, but there's not yet any kind of freedom within it. You externalize your fear by causing others pain, just like we discussed previously. So you may be seeking love. You know, at the foundation of this, you're seeking love and understanding and compassion, but you're doing it through negative attention, we can say, which can become quite abusive. So let's look at the gift of dynamism. I feel like that was a really heavy gene key, and it is. It is a heavy one to talk about and to discuss. But yes, how do we now step into the gift of dynamism, and what does that really mean? When you look at a child around 7 years old, they are the true embodiment of this meaning of dynamism. It is about play. So what happens to all of us is that, of course, when we were born, we want to play, right? As a child, we just want to play. But the moment that we have to go to school, that play stops, and we then have to become more homogenized, and we have to become, we experience a decline in our natural dynamism. And here, the gift of dynamism is about it's a genius potential. It's a potential to be genius. But when we go to school and in the main, education system, we tend to view knowledge as genius, but it's not. We tend to feel like, a child who has come to school and is able to just get a really high score and displays very high IQ in some ways is a genius. And that is kind of true in the sense that that's a natural genius. But what we tend to do then is we tend to sort of try to not contain, but direct this natural genius of a child into knowledge. So we put knowledge into them. We say, now you have to learn this in order to grow your genius. You have to study this and read this book and read this book. And we confuse genius with knowledge when genius doesn't have to be tamed. Genius is not meant to be tamed. Genius doesn't even have to be studied. Genius is just there within your independence and your individuality and in your play. We can say that every child in this sense is a genius in some ways because they, when they were playing, they were absolutely genius, but that was cut off at some point in their life because now they have to be forced into knowledge, which we somehow think that the more they're forced into this knowledge, the smarter they're going to actually become and the more they're going to be able to tap into their genius potentials. When that's not really the case, because if you just let that child be as they are, can you imagine? I mean, of course, with some boundaries. Of course, children have to be learned boundaries and moralities, we can say. But when it comes to their talents, they have to be able to just let it seed. Let that seed go into nature, plant it in nature, and allow that seed to flourish. Actually, this is a really interesting sort of realization that just came up to me because I realized that last year I was planting these sunflowers. So I had these sunflower seeds and I flopped them into my garden out in nature, and then I would water them a little bit, but they were just out in nature, right? And I also, and maybe it's because of the seed of the sunflowers, but those sunflowers grew up to be 3 meters tall. I don't know if you've seen some pictures that I've made Maybe I did. I showed you guys maybe on Instagram, something like that. But they were so tall and so big that when people came over to our house, they just were like, what is that? And I was like, it's my sunflower. I just let it be, and it became like something very special and unique. But can you imagine if I put that seed into a pot and I grew it inside my home? I don't think it would have been able to grow up to that height because of the contained condition that I would put it in. So I hope that this metaphor kind of paints a picture for you guys in terms of what the capabilities of dynamism really is when it comes to this gene key. So one of the quickest and simplest ways to raise your frequency and to step into dynamism is to do what you love and to do what you're passionate about and to be a child again. So you have to be able to unleash your creative dynamism. The more creative you are, the more energy will be available to you. The more creative you can be, the more energy you have. So if you have this gene key and you're feeling like, I'm having a burnout, fatigue, I'm tired again, I don't have energy, I can't metabolize my food, my health is not going very well for me, it's probably because you're doing something in your life with regards to that planet, that house, maybe one of those angles, that you don't actually love, that you don't actually have passion for, that you cannot use your creativity in. Or maybe you're in the right field for you, or whatever that is, but you can't use your creativity there for whatever reason that is, and that will deplete your energy. So it's a really good signpost for you. So at a higher energy frequency, you're still provocative, but you provoke the right things, we can say. In the shadow frequency of provocation, fear provokes fear. Somebody puts their fear onto you, you're provoked by that fear, you provoke them back with fear, right? Anger provokes anger. In the gift of dynamism, creativity provokes creativity. So you using creativity will provoke other people to use their creativity and provoke your creativity. Other people's using their creativity, you're provoked by that, you use your creativity, and it goes in this beautiful loop, of creative loop. Action provokes action, and genius provokes genius. This is the true spirit of the warrior. When you have the gene key 39 in the gift of dynamism, this gene key, you will know no fear. You're fearless, and that is the true spirit of the warrior. So I'm going to give you 3 main points as written in Gene Key's book with regards to what it means to be a true warrior. The first point of the true warrior here is that even though you are provoked, you still manage to control your anger and your own reaction. Right? The reaction doesn't always have to be like violence or shouting. The reaction can be crying. That's also a reaction. So no matter how much you're provoked, you're able to control your reaction. And then direct your reaction. So it's not about controlling it and repressing it, but it's directing it into something else. Or directing it in a way that is creative and productive. Second, point of what it means to be a true warrior here is that you are able to defeat those who cannot control their anger. And this doesn't mean that you have to do anything to defeat the people who are at who cannot control their anger or their reactions. But what it just means is that you don't sink to their level. That's all what it means, is that the more they're provoking you or trying to cause a reaction in you and you just don't, but you direct that into something more productive, you've already won. The third point of the true warrior is that ultimately, at some level, you cannot be provoked at all. And maybe this is more of the siddhi level, but that provocation is no longer possible for you. They understand that there are no separate individuals in the first place, so there is nothing to provoke, that we are all united and one and whole. So when you're no longer using this gene key in the shadow, when you're using it in the gift of dynamism, you're able to provoke others into their creativity and into more freedom as well. You have the ability to touch other people's spirits in a way that helps them break out of the things that traps them into higher levels of energy and freedom. So let's look at the siddhi of liberation a little bit here. Yes, I don't want to be spending too much time talking about the siddhi because the siddhi frequency is a frequency of enlightenment and it's beingness. So when you are sort of consistently playing out the gift frequency in your life, you will the city will dawn upon you, we can say. Richard Rudd describes the city of liberation, that when the gift of dynamism becomes liberation is when it forgets itself entirely. It's ironic because when you give up your individual freedom, that is when the city of liberation will fully dawn upon you. And this is a very interesting concept to consider, because we tend to think that liberation and freedom is about individual freedom, or it is about, having freedom from the boundaries of something else. But here it almost seems like to give up your illusion of individual freedom can give you an even greater gift. And here it is called the gift of being. So the difference between individual freedom and being is that when you're having individual freedom, right, you are free from something else. But liberation is a frequency where you cannot be free from anything anymore. You just are. There is nothing that you have to be free from. So even though liberation seems to be mostly in our culture described as an event, Richard Rudd, however, describes this as something that it's not even an event. It's something that is beyond time. It doesn't even exist within time. It's similar to what we can consider as dying. And this has really touched me to my heart when we think about the concept of dying as being liberating. When this idea that we come to this earth, and when we are living in this material world, we do experience suffering and pain as much as we experience love. We also experience a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. And to die, sometimes it's very freeing, especially at old age, or when you're getting sick and you're just kind of on your deathbed and you're in a lot of pain. Dying is the most liberating thing, and it's truly honorable to see somebody who we can say is ready to die, is ready to give up this life, is truly ready to give up this life, because it's the right thing to do and it's the honorable thing to do in that moment. We're not talking about somebody who is giving up this life through sort of taking their own life and suicide. We're not talking about it in that sense. We're talking about a sense where accepting that you're in a place of disease and it's time to let that disease go because there's no cure for it, for example, like in the case of having cancer, the sign of cancer, or when you're at war and the true warrior who is ready to sort of go into that war to fight for something, for a cause that's higher than yourself, and you're ready to die for that. So there's certain cases where leaving this world and dying can be seen as both honorable, Gene Key 38, and liberating, Gene Key 39. Richard Rudd says that liberation is beautifully represented through the metaphor of the warrior's death. The warrior's life is one of preparation, adversity, energy, and finally, death. The perfect death for the warrior is to die in battle. So the perfect death for somebody with Gene Key 39 is to eventually leave this earth fighting for something that they truly believe in. And 38 as well. That's why they are programming partners in a sense. Dying for a higher cause, we can say. Rebirth that takes place after the warrior has given his life for a higher cause. This rebirth is liberation. That is so beautiful. So, so beautiful. And this doesn't even have to be a physical death, but it can be the sense of leaving that zoo. And once you have left that zoo, you devote your entire life to liberating other animals in the zoo, or to live your life making sure that you are never going to be in that position of being in the zoo again. And you are willing to die for that. You're willing to embody this energy of surrender for that higher cause. Reward. The reward is the annihilation of fear through the death of the smaller self, is what Richard Rudd says. So when you see people who are in the city of liberation, you will notice that they become teachers who direct the force of their love. right to the weakest part of your armor and use certain techniques that will allow you to surrender the things that are trapping you, your armor. And if, however, you are provoked by that or you take that personally, there's still a lot for you to learn in terms of what you can surrender to and how you can surrender. So that's going to be the transmission of Gene Key 39 for today, beautiful souls. Thank you very much for coming along on this journey. If you have this Gene Key, please leave a comment below and let us know what your experiences have been. And if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't. If you already have, then thank you very much for coming along. As usual, I appreciate you all so much, beautiful souls, more than you could imagine. And if you're interested in having any of Scent of the Sages, ritual oils, or any other crafts that I've created with my hands from natural organic ingredients, then do head over to scentofthesages.com. If you're interested in readings, joining our courses or programs, then head over to tanastrology.com. All right, have a lovely day, beautiful souls. Sending you lots of liberation today.